Good morning. It is Friday, September 11th, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, Austria halts rail service to Hungary as record numbers of refugees stream to the border. And the United States jumps in to say it, too, will take in 10,000 refugees as well. 14 years after 9/11, is the West underestimating the global dangers of ISIS, as it did with Al-Qaeda a decade and a half ago before the attacks? And later on the show, finally, something lighter. We're going to wrap up the Venice Film Festival with a closer look. Good morning, I'm Yael Levi, and we begin in Europe, where the refugee crisis gripping the world hit record numbers this week as migrants keep streaming through the Balkans into Hungary. Despite the new fence being erected on the Hungarian border, thousands of refugees fleeing conflict in the Middle East continue to make it across the border and into the European bloc. The refugees who are trying desperately to leave Eastern Europe, where government policies and statements make it clear they are unwelcome, seek refuge to the more liberal West, particularly Germany. Yesterday, the number of asylum seekers was so large, it forced Austria to suspend its cross-border train services. EU interior ministers are set to meet on Monday to discuss a plan unveiled by European Commission Chief Jean-Claude Juncker to share out 160,000 refugees across the bloc and ease the burden on frontline states. Germany, which has already welcomed 450,000 migrants this year, wants the 28-nation group to go further, calling the plan a drop in the ocean. Non-European countries, including the US and Australia, have vowed to try and receive a share of the refugees from Syria too, but are looking only at several thousand. To try and figure out what this week meant for Europe and the refugee crisis, I'm very honored to be joined in studio by Ambassador-designate Lars Fabuk Andersen, head of the delegation of the European Union to the State of Israel. Ambassador, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Let's first take a look at the report from the latest in Europe and break it down from there.
Across Europe tonight, the divisive question: what to do with the hundreds of thousands of refugees, with the world now watching. Jolted by that image from Turkey, the 3-year-old boy from Syria, his body carried away from that beach, he and his brother slipping from their father's arms when their small rubber boat capsized. And for so many families, that is where the harrowing journey begins. Escaping war in the Middle East through Turkey, paying to board those rickety boats to Greece, then those 2 routes by foot and train to Austria and Germany. Families telling me today here they paid more than $1,200 per person to board those boats, knowing that they and their children might not even survive. Our Dan Harris was there as another boat arrived just this week on the Greek island of Lesbos.
This is just an incredible scene. These people, families, have just risked their lives, everything they own, everybody they love, to cross this narrow strait here to arrive here in Greece.
And the numbers are staggering. More than 350,000, some estimate up to 500,000, have already fled war, terror, and poverty entering Europe this year. More than 2,300 have died at sea. And so many asking, why the exodus now? Our team along the route for weeks, families telling us that their hope was finally lost. Trapped in refugee camps on Syria's borders, they have realized it's simply getting worse. They also say they now have a route to follow. Many have heard from family, loved ones, telling me today they've sent maps, tips on social media, Facebook, tips to avoid the danger. And they say there is a sense of safety in numbers. They now know they're not the first ones. Like that couple we met today. We went back to find them further up that route at a makeshift tent camp.
Everything is just covered in mud here. And we're going to see if we can find that young family. Hey, how are you? You have food? You got food?
Food, yes.
We find them eating dinner, just handed their first hot meal in a month.
And even as we stand here in a field of mud and rain, you are happy.
Yes, yes.
As we said, the bulk of these refugees are trying to make their way to Germany. And joining us now via Skype from Berlin is Yediot Ahronot's correspondent there, Eldad Beck. Eldad, thank you for joining us again this morning. I know I've asked you this before this week, but at the end of the day, it is Angela Merkel only who's trying to make room, so to speak, quote unquote, for these refugees. Lack of intent in that respect for the rest of the EU bloc. Can Germany handle this mass amount, even in the short run, pardon me, that are streaming in at this point?
Good morning, Yael. It seems indeed that Angela Merkel is getting more and more isolated, not only in Europe, but also in her own country. We are hearing this morning an extreme exchange of opinions between Merkel and her own allies in her own union of conservatives. People are saying that actually what was done in recent days was irresponsible, was done out of emotions and not of any serious and realistic calculation of Germany's ability to integrate that many immigrants. And what we see outside of Germany is that the number of states of the European Union opposing the huge, massive acceptance of immigrations into Europe, as done by Germany in recent days, is being more and more rejected, and you have more and more countries not accepting the German policy of welcoming so many refugees into their own borders.
Now, we're looking at Monday at a meeting, Eldad, that is going to take place between European unions and member states to try and deal with this. Is Angela Merkel's position on this in Europe? We know what it is, but does it destabilize her that much also within her own country?
It seems that Angela Merkel's public position right now is extremely difficult. She is getting large support from the left parties, mainly the major ally in her coalition, the Social Democrats. But the public opinion is slowly turning against what we have seen in recent days. In recent days.
Eldad Beck from Berlin joining us. I want to thank you once again for being with us this morning. And as we said, we are joined in studio by the ambassador delegate to the State of Israel, Lars Farburg. I want to start with asking you, because you were looking at these mass amount of people streaming into Europe. And we've seen reports that are beautiful of people accepting them in, but a major, major, major concern is a concern by also the upper echelon of the European Union members that this will destabilize Europe to the point of no return. And why? Because at the end of the day, it's a terrible humanitarian crisis.
Well, I mean, of course, the figures are staggering here, and they are very scary to some. But I don't think it's time to be scary now. Now is the time to remember that our obligation towards these people is to protect them and show compassion, live up to our own values of human rights and respect for others. And even though the figures are staggering, it's well to keep in mind that the one country in Europe that's receiving the most per capita is Sweden, and they are receiving 8 asylum seekers per 1,000 inhabitants. A country like Germany is receiving 2 per 1,000, and a country like the UK is receiving 0.5. And all these refugees that are coming in now are only constituting about 0.11% of the total population in Europe. So therefore, I think it is a manageable problem, even though the speed with which they are coming in, of course, poses a number of logistical problems, and it also requires resources. But in Europe has to remember that we are all descendants of refugees ourselves. This continent has been ravaged by war, persecution over the years. And I think that's well to remember. And also we need to remember that these people are coming to Europe because they see Europe as a beacon of hope and compassion. And this, I think, is something we ought to be proud of as well. I would finally make the point that we need these people in the long run. As you know, the labor force in Europe is shrinking, and in the years to come, there will be a deficit of people in the labor force, and therefore these refugees that are coming in now, to the extent that they become well integrated into European society, will be able to make a very
a great contribution. You know, you're speaking beautiful words. We're also looking at, I want us to take a look at some live pictures that are coming in now from the Serbian-Hungarian border. And these are striking pictures that put, for people sitting in the Middle East, when you look at the barbed wired fences that have been put up, and, the mass amount of people trying to get on a train and whatnot. Striking pictures for people sitting in the Middle East, and I'm sure you can understand why. Why not already at this point? Why can't Europe handle even accepting these people in a way? Because in Hungary, we've seen terrible things, in terms of stopping them, putting them, they're running away from authorities. Can that even happen in the near future of just before the integration, just taking them in some sort of a human way?
Well, I think the refugee crisis is obviously also testing internal European solidarity. And I think one of the indications of how far we can come on this is the proposal that was just alluded to before of reallocation of the 160,000 refugees that are currently proposed by the Commission. It's obvious that Greece, Hungary and Italy, who's taking the bulk of the refugees now, cannot absorb them themselves. And therefore there needs to be some kind of redistribution mechanism. I hope that the Commission's proposal on that score will be get a favorable reception from member states, because that will be the first step. But obviously, in the longer run, we need to look at how we can achieve a real common asylum policy, which will maybe also pave the way for a more permanent allocation mechanism and ensure that this is an issue where there is a fair burden sharing, so to speak, among European nations.
And when you say that, you just touched on something that, we sitting outside from Europe are looking at, the solidarity between the nation states within Europe. Can this make or break the EU? Because people from the outside are sitting and saying they can't even agree on, on dispersing these amount of people that desperately need help. Can the EU survive this as a bloc? Because it just shows so many disparities.
No, I'm sure we can survive this as a bloc. That being said, obviously it is a politically very sensitive issue with the public, and it will require leadership on part of European leaders to try to convey to the public that this is our obligation, and this is also something which in the long run is in Europe's interest. That being said, obviously we cannot just open all our borders and let the continent be flooded with people from all over the world. What we are looking at here are people who are really in need of protection because they are fleeing civil wars. But there is also a smaller percentage of the people coming in who are migrants, economic migrants, or people who want to leave their country for other reasons. And there, I think we need to be better to be able to return these people to their country of origin by entering agreements with some of the countries that are the main providers of these economic migrants.
But when it comes to, the understanding that we're seeing the Middle East actually trickle into Europe, we're seeing basically, everything from the wars trickling them back in. I mean, Europe turning to the United States, then looking for them to take some, because it seems like the refugees, and this is my opinion, but, the refugees are also, they're a problem of Europe, not just because they're streaming in, but because of wars that were supported also in this region that, have been going on, and the fact that nobody's really dealing with ISIS, with all the respect, in some ways.
That is, of course, in the end, the most important aspect of this issue, which is tackling the root causes of these various refugee crises. And that is a challenge for our common foreign and security policy. That needs to be stronger, and we need to be stronger in implementing that policy.
In what way? In going back into the region with troops, supporting that, or trying to help the battle in that respect? How could that be done?
As you know, several European nations are already engaged militarily vis-à-vis Syria and Iraq in terms of an air campaign. I don't think that boots on the ground are necessary or unnecessarily on the agenda right now. It might create more problems than it would solve. But obviously, we need to try to build on some of the positive momentum the current on the recent Iran nuclear deal and try to see if we can apply some of the same sentiments when it comes to the issue of Syria. Obviously, both Iran and Russia, who are part and parcel of the 5+1 agreement with Iran on the nuclear issue, are also absolutely vital in order to stop the civil war and the carnage that's going on in Syria now. And hopefully the deal that was concluded will be able to give that dossier some momentum as well.
And that was part of the idea behind that deal, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. And similarly, we need to support the government on reconciliation in Libya in order to stabilize the situation there. We need to keep in mind that the refugees that are coming now are largely coming from Syria, but they're coming from other places as well. They're coming from Iraq, they're coming from Eritrea, for example, they're coming from Somalia, they're coming from Afghanistan also, and even some from Kosovo. So there are multiple centers of crisis that need to be addressed. And over and above the strengthening of our diplomatic endeavors, we also need to try to see if we can help some of the sub-Saharan African countries that are sources of refugee flows, give stronger incentives for their people to stay in country. And for that reason, we have established a fund of 1.8 billion euros to support countries in Africa, including in Northern Africa, on trying to provide better conditions for their people in order to motivate them to stay in their countries rather than fleeing them to other places.
Oh, that's the dealing of the EU with both Africa and the Middle East. But I think it will remain to be seen. As you said, the integration process of these refugees coming into Europe at this point, that is the thing that we're going to be looking at come Monday. I want to thank you very much, Ambassador, for being with us this morning. Very enlightening. And as you said, it's a challenging thing. Hopefully Angela Merkel can stay the course, so to speak. Thank you very much, Ambassador, as we move along.
Thank you.
14 years ago, the world experienced firsthand the extent to which terror can reach its far ends with and when the World Trade Center and the Pentagon were hit by an al-Qaeda-orchestrated attack on the United States. A decade and a half later, it is safe to say that the dangers the Middle East poses to the western part of the world are greater challenges than before. Case in point, one of the main drivers of the massive movement of people into Europe these days, as we just discussed, can be attributed to the rise of the terrorist group ISIS. A year ago this time, the jihadist group was tearing up Iraq and Syria, seizing large swaths of the land with extreme brutality and forcing hundreds of thousands of locals to flee. The September 11th attack led Washington and its allies at the time to launch the war on terror, primarily against the threat of radical Islam, and resulted in a new regime of intelligence gathering and sharing. However, 14 years later, that war continues with no sign of the enemy losing ground, and it seems that intelligence failures are still very present in various military establishments. Let's watch the following report by I-24 News correspondent Shai Ben-Ari and continue from there.
It's a lesson that could have been learned already by now. The Daily Beast reports that a group of more than 50 intelligence analysts from the United States Central Command has issued a formal complaint that their reports on the Islamic State terror group and the al-Nusra Front, al-Qaeda's Syria affiliate, are being deliberately altered to project a narrative more in line with that of the Obama administration. The analysts contend their reports are being modified to display these terror groups as weaker than they really are, to fit in with the line that the U.S. is winning its war on terror.
As I watch the pieces of this come together, it seems to be unfolding in a manner which I think will be successful in Iraq.
And we are having the desired effects. And we're seeing evidence of this not only in our battle damage assessments, but more important, we're noting changes in the enemy's behavior and tactics that reflect his diminished capability and restricted freedom of movement.
Some of these altered reports made it all the way to the president's desk. Others that offered assessments of the situation on the ground deemed too negative were sent back or blocked from moving up the chain. A formal letter of complaint sent to the Pentagon's Inspector General even uses the word Stalinist to describe the tone being set by certain officials in the Defense Department. The complaint has now led to an investigation being opened by the Inspector General. The problem of manipulation and politicization of intelligence in the U.S. defense establishment is not new and has had serious repercussions in the past. In January of 2003, then-President George W. Bush presented a case against the regime of Saddam Hussein during his State of the Union speech to justify the invasion of Iraq later that year.
The British government has learned that Saddam Hussein recently sought significant quantities of uranium from Africa.
This claim, based on faulty intelligence, was included in Bush's speech despite the CIA's objections. He later admitted the intelligence failure in Iraq was the biggest regret of his presidency. Failures of intelligence also preceded the worst attack on American soil since World War II.
In June of 2001, the intelligence community issued a warning that a major al-Qaeda terrorist attack would take place in the next many weeks. We asked, could it take place in the United States? They said, we can't rule that out.
14 years after the 9/11 attacks, it is to be hoped that the dangers of ignoring information concerning security threats are now apparent to decision makers, as well as the dangers of picking and choosing intelligence reports according to political convenience. After all, some lessons of history are often repeated.
Joined in studio by Haaretz senior defense correspondent Amir Owen.
Yeah.
Good morning to you. With us also Ami Kaufman, I-24 News contributor. Thank you for being here this morning. Amir, I want to actually, you know what? No, Ami, let's start with you, because I think you have one piece of information that is quite interesting to us, and that is how this thing transpired. Let's start with 9/11. How it transpired. Basically
inside the White House,
ago.
Basically. The New York Times gives us a little glimpse of some emails that went on inside the White House. They've been actually trying to get these emails for a while now. The George Bush Library is giving some partial glimpse into this. And basically what you see is kind of a progression from
daily,
things are usual in the morning. And after 9, when the first plane hit the tower, how things kind of progress into chaos and confusion. I think we have a few of these emails that we can see on the screen. But basically, the first ones are saying, Karl Rove says, let me see all my emails and let me see all my stuff. And then they say these emails are turn on CNN, and then the next emails are this meeting is canceled, this meeting is canceled, this conference call is canceled. Another email.
Today is Pearl Harbor.
Another one is David Horowitz, a conservative writer who writes to Marley Matlin, a counselor to Vice President Dick Cheney. Today is Pearl Harbor. We also have an email from Javier Solana, as things transpire, who writes to Condoleezza Rice. He was the European Union's chief security official. He says, all my solidarity and friendship today, Javier. Relatives are trying to find out if everybody is okay in the White House. Clay Johnson, an aide to Bush, says that if it's safe enough for the president to return to, it's safe enough for me.
It's safe enough for them. I'm listening to these emails. That came as a huge shock, 9/11. We can discuss for hours why it should not have been a shock, but we're going to move forward to where we're standing today. A huge shock back then. Where is the world intelligence, or let's say the world understanding? Because Al-Qaeda may be, I'm not going to say it, they're definitely not obsolete, but they've been replaced by a bigger foe that the world seems, and I'll say it, to not take as seriously maybe as it should.
Well, one word regarding the run-up to 9/11, and that is that during the Clinton administration, which of course preceded the Bush administration, there was a wall between the FBI and the CIA because the Justice Department said that there is a difference between law enforcement and intelligence. Right. In law enforcement, you are trying to bring to justice someone who has already committed a crime, and intelligence tries to foil. And this wall has been breached, and there is better intelligence understanding of where we are today. Now, of course, everything has been transformed, including American politics. Barack Obama could not have been elected president had he not been seen as the negative to Bush. And Obama grew in prominence because of his opposition to the Iraq War, which came because of
9/11, which was sanctioned because of that.
If you look back, let's say 15 years before 9/11, you had the Mujahideen in Afghanistan helped by the Americans against the Soviets.
And they became
Al-Qaeda, and now we have the Islamic State, we have other movements. Hamas and Hezbollah seem conservative by comparison because they are considered either parts of a national liberation movement, even though there are, of course, even more moderate or less extreme streams within these organizations. But the Islamic State and Jabhat al-Nusra and all of the rest are still very hard to understand by Western standards. The West does not know how to contend with such movements because they spread in Muslim states, because they send their tentacles into Europe and perhaps United States. So this is the challenge for the future.
The challenge for the future, but you know, these days in New York, and we're going to go live now to New York, where we're joined by I-24 News correspondent Daniel Ziri. It's exactly that, and the question, do Americans, and maybe the American public, Daniel, where you're sitting at, understand the dangers that the Middle East poses, even if it's far away and they're not interlaced within these wars? And you had a chance to speak to some people in New York about this date and the understanding of the rest of the globe. What did you hear from them?
Well, Yael, you could say that they're concerned about what's going on in the Middle East. Do they feel the danger really on an everyday life basis? I wouldn't say so. I mean, the concern they have is really concern that they express for the rest of the world, but it seems that the attack that was on 9/11, 2001, well, sort of had its effect and remains a scar in the everyday lives of New Yorkers, but it's not much of them really feeling in danger today. They say, by the way, that they feel much more safe today than they were in 2001. However, it might be, you know, there's a lot of more security, whether it is opening a bank account here that is made much more difficult now, or, you know, different bureaucracy things that you have to go through that are made much more difficult. However, on a daily basis, when you walk in the street, you don't feel that security like you might feel in Israel, for example, where your bags are checked everywhere you go in public places. Here, it's not the case, so they don't really feel that threat on a daily basis.
On a daily basis. Amir, yes, you wanted to add?
Yes, that of course the American way is that you are innocent until proven guilty, and
but sadly, you can't say that about a terror attack.
No, yes, and you are given leeway when you conduct your daily business. What happened following 9/11 with the Transport Security Administration, when you go to airports and other, has placed such an enormous burden that now you see some pullback.
You see pullback, sadly, all the time that we have, but it is 14 years after 9/11, and we'll be taking a bit more of a look on how it affected also not just the world, but also culture. Do stay with us. Coming up next, in addition to that, A Tale of Love and Darkness is also an official trailer, is also a closer look of us. So do stay with us. First, the news. I-24 News, Friday on this September 11th, 2015. I'm joined in studio by Ami Kaufman.
Morning.
And by Ronnie Stav. And I'm not my usual happy self, as you can see. I know I'm not making any jokes. I tackled you with that. Because for me, it's hard. You know, it's September 11th, and possibly because I was in New York, because I saw those towers come down, because all three of us live in the Middle East, and I think it is still affected by everything that transpired after 9/11. It is 9/11.
It is.
It is. How am I going to make Ami Kaufman now with the with the press review? With the press review. You see, I can't even find my words. Go into the headlines that we missed while scanning the news, and I butchered that as well.
Totally unrelated to 9/11.
Yes.
But tomorrow, September 12th, will be a very important day in Britain, because yesterday, actually, the polls closed and the voting is over in the Labour leadership election. And it looks like Jeremy Corbyn is going to take it, according to all these preliminary polls that we've had before. The three other candidates, Andy Burnham, Liz Kendall, and Yvette Cooper, tell you, nobody's really even heard them. Nobody barely knows their names or what they stand for. Jeremy Corbyn has been in the news, and tomorrow it looks like, despite the leadership that was against him, former leadership, including Tony Blair, he is going to take it. Now we're going to have to see, after he takes the reins of this party, if what will happen is what they warned of, that this is the end of the Labour Party, and if they will not have some kind of rebellion inside the Labour Party. So
sounds like the Labour Party all around the world is going through the same. Yeah,
it is. Syria. Russia is pledging more help to Syria despite U.S. concerns that they voiced over this. Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, said yesterday, "We helped and are continuing to help and will help the Syrian government when it comes to supplying the Syrian army with everything it needs." I think, personally, I think this is, especially after the Iran deal and after the sanctions that are lifted, this is a boost for Assad, and it means basically a lot more death and destruction in Syria, and a lot more people that are going to be killed, as this man is, of course, dropping barrel bombs on his people. Yesterday we just heard,
including chemical gas,
But it's interesting that despite all this help from Iran and from Syria, yesterday we just heard, and I reported here, that he lost Assad, the whole province of Idlib, to rebel forces. There are no Assad security forces in the whole province of Idlib anymore. So
it just shows that when his regime is really destabilized. About 2.5 weeks ago, we heard that he's encircled and Assad forces are losing. Bam, we see more Russia coming in.
Really
it's clear that Russia wants him in power. It's clear also the United States
does not want him, and Saudi Arabia do not want him.
But the United States doesn't seem to care at this point. In some ways.
They're not doing enough to show a lot of care.
Exactly.
You're right.
Yes.
In Turkey, tensions are still very high, and I want to focus now on this headline from Hurriyet, the opposition newspaper. They're focusing on a town in the southeast of Turkey called Cizre. Nobody's really heard about it, but it's been in a curfew for a whole week. Nobody's going in and nobody's going out.
Why?
And there are actually reports that there are innocent civilians that are dying there of sniper fire, of government forces sniper fire there, and this is actually a stronghold of the PKK. There were PKK members of parliament that walked 90 kilometers in protest of this curfew all the way to Cizre, and they were stopped by Turkish forces. They were not let in. Very interesting situation in Cizre. Nobody's really reporting about it, but thousands of people are under lockdown in this place and dying, and I just thought it would be a good idea to let people know that what's going on in this place.
That's going on, and that Erdogan essentially is also using the campaign against ISIS to solve, quote unquote, his internal problems with the PKK.
That's right. That's what a lot of the Western powers are fearing about.
Yeah. And it is 9/11, just to remind people.
Right.
Yes.
Off to Africa. This is a pretty interesting discovery when it comes to archaeology. Scientists have discovered a new human-like species in a burial chamber deep in a cave system in South Africa. About 15 partial skeletons, called the largest single discovery of its type in Africa. And researchers claim that this discovery will change ideas about our human ancestors. We have a short soundbite I want you to see from Professor Lee Berger. This is the man who led the discovery team. Let's check it out.
Let's hear.
We've discovered a new species of hominid within our own genus, the genus Homo. We've called it Homo naledi. It's a remarkable species like nothing we've ever seen before. A tiny little head the size of an orange with very human-like sized teeth, but also teeth that are shaped like much more primitive hominids. The body is unusual, ape-like in the shoulders, primitive in the pelvis, but the upper limbs and lower limbs are largely human-like. Well, that is except for the very curved distal phalanges of the fingers, which create a very odd package, a mosaic hominid that was clearly a long-distance walker, but also something that was from the very roots of our genus.
I have to show this.
Show the
okay,
picture,
I
right.
have to show
That's
this
what it looked
because
like.
I mean it's kind of what I wanted to do, but this is where we come from, people.
Yeah. By the way, this is 3 million years ago.
No, 3 million years ago, and this is
We come from like a whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say this is quite a blow to the non-evolutionists.
Right. And
because this really shows.
What's interesting is that this actually shows that 3 million years ago they were having a burial ritual. That they had rituals.
Burial
rituals.
But also the evolutionary transformation. Yeah. When we said we had a half ape, half human, that's probably non-evolutionists are having not a good day. Yes.
Okay. Another poll that Clinton is losing. Iowa. She lost New Hampshire a few days ago. She is hashtag feeling the burn, as they call it.
Oh, yeah.
41% to 40 in Iowa. This is from the headline. This is from The Hill, and I want to show you the next headline from the New York Times. They're already talking in the Democratic Party about some sort of white knight that will come and rescue the Democratic Party.
Oh my God,
the names that they're showing, as you can see in this next headline, are John Kerry, Joseph Biden, Elizabeth Warren, and Al Gore. Some of these people have already lost elections. I don't know why they're going to bring them back. Biden is already, he might probably tell us at the end of this month or maybe in early October if he's going to run or not. But this shows how bad Clinton's state is if Democrats are already talking about how to save the party.
How to save the party, and if it's published in the New York Times, there is a plan B in position, and it's Yeah.
And I just want to end very quickly with a short commercial that is showing in Mexico ahead of a game between America, the United States, and Mexico. This Mexican TV station is using what Donald Trump said about a month ago against Mexicans. Let's check it out.
Let's take a look.
We don't have victories anymore. The American dream is dead.
Well done, Mexican TV. I thought
well done, Mexican TV, definitely. But I mean, seriously, no, I'm just, every time I hear that man speak, it's to me, what has become of politics worldwide?
Very true, very true.
Ami Kaufman, the man, the bow tie. Thank you. You're locked
my
inside.
Pleasure, my pleasure.
Yeah, Ronnie Stav is here. Ronnie. Culture, but
yes, but still not making things lighter here in the studio today. Though Trump made my day much better right now.
Every time we're low.
Every time we're low, just
Trump.
like
bring him up. I think he should win. I really do.
And then Kanye will replace him in 2020.
Exactly, and Kanye is his VP. Yes.
So much fun. The world is going to such a great place. But talking about 9/11, Peter Fonda is to replace the late Christopher Lee in the ensemble of 9/11 drama by Javier Nemo that is called The 11th. And it is about 8 stories about the 24 hours before the 9/11 attack. There's actually some more replacements going on in this film. We're going to see Sharon Stone.
The hours that will deal with what? We're like on a personal level, just personal stories.
8 different stories. Yeah. Of
no, that's such a
24 hours before.
Ronnie, I know that you were just born in 2001, but
I was just born.
No, but it's. I think that's a fabulous idea
because
to me, because I was in New York, I remember the 24 hours before 9/11 exactly.
Yeah,
I remember walking in the evening in New York on September 10th with a friend of mine, going to have sushi. It was this beautiful September evening. It was just really like September, the best month in New York, and we were discussing the mayoral elections that were supposed to happen the next day, and clearly were canceled. And can Bloomberg win? Yes or no? And everything seemed,
everything
interesting.
Seemed different.
The 11th hour.
So yeah, I think and I think that in general, all the movies that were being made on 9/11, reflecting on 9/11, whatever that is, I think you're completely right that the personal stories, not necessarily the story of the drama and the trauma and so on and so forth, are the stories that are the most powerful one. Because at the end of the day, it was just a day.
It was
that changed the world.
It changed the world. It changed all our lives. That changed. I remember thinking the day after on 9/11. The world will never be the same. That's the first thing that went through my head, and it's not. I mean, we're sitting in a region where everything deeply affected, still affected by that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So Peter Fonda is going to replace Christopher Lee. There's a bunch of more replacements coming up. Sharon Stone is going to replace Uma Thurman. So yeah, I guess they're not very set with that movie yet, but I guess it's going to be exciting. And good.
Okay, and
Tale of Love and Darkness.
Oh boy.
Yes, there's so much to
Natalie
say
Portman.
about it, but everyone has talked about it so much, so let's hear a little
start
bit
with
more.
The trailer.
And yes, please do.
Last week, Natalie Portman presented to the Israeli public a story of love and darkness, the first full feature film ever directed by the celebrated actress. For its premiere at Cinema City in Jerusalem, Natalie Portman invited former President Shimon Peres and Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat. The movie represents a successful first step for the young director, despite some negative reviews by some cinema critics.
I don't want to talk about that.
The holder of an Oscar for Best Actress tackles this time a book by an icon of Israeli literature. A Tale of Love and Darkness is the adaptation of the famous novel by author Amos Oz. To adapt the autobiographical bestseller was not the only challenge that Natalie Portman had to face. The actress-director also chose Hebrew as the language to be spoken in the film. Yet this film is primarily the story of a son who sees his mother sink into melancholy, depression, and deteriorating, facing the emptiness of life.
Well, it's a Jerusalemite movie. It's a movie about Jerusalem, in Jerusalem, by a producer from Jerusalem.
The bigger picture also describes the birth of Israel, led by the departure of the British, the declaration of Israel's independence on May 14th of 1948, and then the Independence War. The Israeli elite attended the premiere, including the former president of the Jewish state, Shimon Peres.
I want to thank Natalie from the depth of my heart, because I don't think it was for her professional effort. She felt like a mission to bring her back to the beauty of Jerusalem.
Not getting very good reviews, though.
It started with not good reviews. She was getting a lot of fire from everyone, from critics in Israel, saying like, "Oh, can she actually act in Hebrew?" And she's making this like piece. And I mean, Love of Tale and Darkness. It's like it's a piece. It's one of the.
Exactly.
It's a milestone.
It's a milestone.
And you know, you have
first
to
of all,
handle
I
it
did
with...
not know she chose. Again, I know very little, but I think it's right to choose Hebrew for this because have you read the book?
Absolutely,
No, it's an amazing book. I mean, it's
it really
but it's a love story to the Hebrew language. It really,
and it's a love story to Israel, and it's a love story to the to the Israel it was before being Israel, and I mean the story is so, and it's true, the story is so gentle, it's so heavy, it's I don't remember how many pages, it's like 800 pages, and but it's then again so gentle and it's so small, going again to 9/11, like big bombastic events, but actually such a small story. And Amos Oz, his biography, his mother had to deal with a mental disease, killed herself later on.
And it's basically it's his life story.
It's definitely it's all about his life story. She was mentioning she raised money for this film for 8 years, and she was saying that she ended up playing in it from financial reasons, because the distributors at some point said we need an Oscar.
It's amazing. There's something comforting for me to hear that even Natalie Portman takes 8 years to raise money for a film.
True.
I have to say.
True. Now the critiques are starting to get better. I don't know. In the past, since it started to film around Israel, you know, critics around when it was in Cannes, it wasn't even in the official contest, just in the official list. So it was obvious what they think about it. But actually, we're starting to get, you know, like it's such a Jewish/Israeli thing. Like first we'll butcher it to the end, and they'll go like, oh, but it's actually charming. Okay, great, we love it. We love it.
And then we'll feel sorry for it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm excited about it.
No. I'm waiting to see it.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of festivals,
Venice Festival, 72nd Venice Festival.
Yeah, I mean, I weren't there.
Next year. Next year, we'll all go together. We'll do a field trip.
What is in the festival?
There's so many films in the festival. I want to talk about two of them. The first one, if you're not excited about it, whoever you are, that's problematic, because it's Charlie Kaufman's new film, Charlie Kaufman, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, adaptation, being John Malkovich. He's actually doing a stop-motion film. It started as a play in 2005. He got super excited about it. He did a Kickstarter about it, saying it's going to be a short film. He tried to raise $200,000. He raised $400,000. It's 80 minutes film right now. It's telling the story of Michael Stone, voiced by David Thewlis from Harry Potter. He's going for town for a conference, but he's in this crisis that everyone is talking in the same way. They have the same voice until he's meeting Lisa, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and that's
that would be it.
Stop motion, and it's super exciting.
And it's a great movie. Quickly about Rabin, just really quickly. Rabin,
The Last Days. The Amos Gitai new film. It's actually getting great critiques. When they filmed it in the festival last Monday, he asked for a minute to stand for the death of Riam Davasha. Making it super political, which is very important.
Which is very important, and got a lot of flack for it, but I'm glad, you know.
I'm very glad he did that.
Artistically, he did that.
Because the history is continuing.
It's continuing. All the time we have, do stay with us. Next is the best of the week that was I-24 News Morning Edition. Of course, tune in Monday for another morning edition, and stay with the channel for the rest of the day for your news.